Hey guys, and welcome. With the release of the highly anticipated Halo Encyclopaedia, it includes a lot of lore that we weren't really given during the Halo Infinite campaign, and some very interesting bits as well. I'm going to do a series of videos covering these lore pieces as well from the Encyclopedia, and on the back of that adding to my Halo Infinite theories I've done on the channel and even creating some new ones down the road as well. But guys, you know the drill by now, leave your theories and comments down below, but it doesn't matter how crazy or out there they might be, I'd love to read through them all and to have a community discussion around what potentially could be coming to Halo Infinite going forward, DLC and even other content that could be coming to Halo Infinite moving forward. So yeah, make sure you leave those down below in the comments. But leave a like guys, it'd be much appreciated. Subscribe if you're brand new and want more lore videos coming to around Halo, and again check the timestamps in the description down below to skip to whichever part of the video that you're more interested in as well. But let's get into it. So let's start off with the Endless. The Encyclopedia gives us our first look at some brief canon around the Endless and a bit of a description around their species in general, how they were discovered, how Atriox found out about the Endless and why he wanted to free them, and even the main reason why Atriox went to Zeta Halo and why he wanted to go there. It actually even mentions that they could be immune to the Flood as well, which for me is really interesting because this is official. So if they're hinting at that, could it be the case that that is actually true? But anyway, let's get into it, read the page for you guys, and let's talk about it a bit more at the end. Okay, so this page goes by Audits Complete on the Encyclopedia, and it's page 485, so let's go. Long ago, the Endless represented an unforeseen reality, something that stood poised to change the future in ways the Forerunners could not abide. Now, once more, after long ages hidden within the shadows of Zeta Halo, the Endless stand ready to alter the course of the galaxy. The Zalanin are an enigmatic civilization of alien creatures who mysteriously survived the firing of the Halo array over 100 millennia ago. At this time, incredibly little is known about their nature, though through careful observation it indicates that they somehow have the ability to manipulate various forces of energy types, including perhaps most troublingly, time itself. Through what extent it's unknown at this time. The Zalanin species are clearly a highly intelligent sapient species who, following imprisonment at the hands of the Forerunners on Zeta Halo, were suddenly set free from their captivity by the alien alliance known as the Banished. Now onto the discovery of the Endless. When the remaining Forerunners ventured out to reseed life in the galaxy following the array's activation, they found what should not exist. Something had in fact survived Halo. The Zalanin represented an unforeseen factor, an acute imbalance that could not be allowed to left unchecked, whilst the rest of the galaxy's species began to recover and evolve. With this reality in mind, a great judgment was rendered by the Forerunners. Now onto the banishment of the Endless. The Forerunners took Zeta Halo to the Zalanin homeworld and brought aboard a host of individuals, including their ruling class, under the guise of a parley. Within the auditorium, the Zalanin was sentenced to exile. In time, the installation's monitor and other Forerunner constructs ran tests on their species in hopes to unlock the secrets of their survival. If they were immune to the Halo, might they also be immune to the Flood itself? These were questions that needs answers, and using Zeta Halo's unique capabilities, many a vestige of its older design, the Forerunners prepared to conceal this final, terrible sin. Over time, a scant few Zalanin who had survived their kind's imprisonment roamed the galaxy in secret, visiting scattered outposts and installations in hope that they would find a solution in order to free their people. Many millennia later and far removed from the galaxy, it seemed that their potential solution had indeed been found, but by Atriox, the leader of the Banished. Learning from his dark Forerunner secret whilst on the Ark, the Drauhane Warmaster realised that he might have unexpected and potentially powerful allies at his disposal, being that the modern galaxy had not yet encountered. This drove him to set off for Zeta Halo to try and free the Endless for himself and become allies with them. Really interesting because we don't get that information during the campaign. So to understand the reason why Atriox did set off and why he was on Zeta Halo, this is a really good indication that he somehow found out about the Endless and species that were roaming the galaxy in secret. Very interesting, we haven't really heard of anything about that before, so I'm very interested to see where DLC takes this. Now, going on to the resolution. The Reformation was cut short by the efforts of the human Spartan, the Master Chief. However, the Arbinger's endeavours were not entirely in vain, as she was finally able to discover the whereabouts of her kind, delivering a message of the amending emancipation, a challenge that both humanity and the Banished must be prepared to endure, but to what extent remains unknown. Now, the interesting part of that one section there is that it mentions that the Harbinger essentially delivered the location of the Endless, and from the ritual that was done towards the end of the campaign, this helped to find out exactly where the Endless are, and potentially it actually was given to Atriox, but it's interesting to find out how that's the case, and with the auditorium essentially being destroyed by Cortana with Atriox within inside, how did he survive it? And these questions at the moment we still don't really understand, so potentially this is more things within this encyclopedia that we can do and more future videos, so make sure you are subscribed to stick around for that if you do want to know more lore about that. But that's the page on the Endless. They're still a complete mystery to us at this point. The only thing that we do know is potentially, obviously, the Harbinger, and then other points around that as well, and different bits as how apparently there were species roaming the galaxy beforehand, and that's how Atriox found out about them, and that's why he went to Zeta Halo. So yeah, interesting lore, bits to fill in the lore there as well about the campaign, and I'm excited to see where this goes in the future. Next, let's move on to the Harbinger. Now, in the encyclopedia, we got a lot of new information around the details of the Harbinger and her overall character, what species she is, and even as far as her rank in the faction. This makes so much sense after reading it, and it could make some amazing DLC, and even other members of the faction could be locked away on Zeta Halo. So after hearing it does cover a lot of things that we already know throughout the campaign, but there are some very interesting points in there that we might not have known, and it does fill in some of those story gaps that we're a little bit unsure of at the moment. So let's get into it. A member of the mysterious Zalanin race, the individual known as the Harbinger was part of the species' ruling class and a member of the delegation sent to meet the Forerunner representatives at Zeta Halo. Having inexplicably survived the effects of the Halo's cleansing blast, the Zalanin were deemed too dangerous to leave unchecked and were imprisoned within the depths of the ring. During the Banished's occupation on Zeta Halo, the Harbinger was released from her imprisonment, resulting in a tenuous alliance with the mercenary faction in hopes of setting free the remainder of her kind. Working with the Banished War Chief Escharum, she infiltrated the conservatory, capturing Despondent Pyre and extracting the Monitor's Encephalon core in order to gain access to the ring's central systems. This ultimately resulted in the activation of the local Reformation Spires to initiate both repair on the Auditorium's facility and recasting of key installation functionality. Once successful in rebuilding and accessing the Auditorium, she made a final attempt to locate and release her people, before she was confronted by the Master Chief. With the aid of an artificial intelligence, which at the moment we do not know what it is, but we do think it's offensive bias, the Spartan successfully defeated the Harbinger. However, her plans had already been set in motion, although to what extent is currently still unknown. So just within that little bit of a description there, we kind of understand a lot more around the Harbinger, what she actually is, and her rank within the Endless, or the Zalanin species. So the Harbinger was a class of the Zalanin species that was sent to Zeta Halo in order to meet with Despondent Pyre, the Grand Edict, and others within the Parley. Not only this as well, but the Harbinger was a member of the ruling class, and a part of the delegation that was sent by the leaders of the Endless to meet with the Forerunners on Zeta. This point is really interesting because it means that the members of the Endless are still within the Silexes below the Zeta Halo, and that will hold our new antagonist, which is very interesting to think about as well. So the brand new Endless antagonist is still beneath the depths of Zeta Halo, or it could be one of the species or members of the species that were traveling the universe in secret. We don't know at this moment in time, but anything is possible with 343, and we know this from previous Halos. It's also very interesting to touch upon as well within that description. It mentions that the alliance between the Harbinger and the Banished was very tenuous, which means that the alliance was very weak and it could essentially collapse at any moment between the two factions. This just shows that the Harbinger didn't really want to work with the Banished. Her main goal was to try and free her species and potentially just get one over the Forerunners and become the rightful holders of the Mantle of Responsibility. Whereas Atriox and the Banished wanted to utilise the Harbinger or the Endless or the Zalanin species in order to become a more powerful faction overall and potentially merge the two, as we mentioned earlier on. So Atriox's goal was to essentially gain domination of the universe, whereas the Harbinger's goal was just to free the faction and become the rightful holders of the Mantle of Responsibility, which they believed that they are, because the precursors essentially were the holders, if that makes sense. So yeah, let me know what you think down below. Kind of confusing to get your heads around, but making a lot more sense now we're reading these descriptions and going off these points. However, it doesn't stop there. The encyclopedia gives us our first look at Abaddon. Now, Abaddon was a precursor AI and was in charge of overseeing the Arcane Knowledge Network. Abaddon was way more sophisticated than pretty much any other Forerunner Ancilla that was ever created, and it was left behind by the precursors after their apparent extinction. Abaddon was housed primarily in the heart of Maithrillion as well, and here's a brief description of Abaddon within the encyclopedia just to give you a brief overview of what this AI essentially is, and we can discuss it a bit more after. Little is known regarding the origins and the intelligence called Abaddon. Appearing in a form conventionally assumed to be akin to the precursor Ancilla, Abaddon manifested as the protector of the domain, charged with overseeing the Arcane Knowledge Network to unclear ends. The indigo luminescent being was left in a compromised state following the firing of the Halo array, which severely damaged the domain and its interface framework, prompting Abaddon to seek both recompense for the damage done and a viable neurogenetic template from which to revive and restore the repository. Abaddon was confronted by a group of Forerunners seeking to aid in the domain's resurrection, as well as their own solemn journey out of the path of Tolgreth and into the Great Beyond. After a very brief conflict, a Forerunner lifeworker named Grow Through Trial of Change sacrificed herself to successfully begin the domain's healing process, resulting in Abaddon to disappear. Now, the interesting part of the lore of this is it doesn't actually mention that Abaddon was dead, destroyed, or anything like that. It just mentions that Abaddon disappeared after this Forerunner essentially sacrificed herself to aid the domain's healing process. But I want you guys to take a look at this image very, very closely and tell me, does it look familiar in any way at all? Because to me, this precursor AI looks very, very similar to the Harbinger. This further indicates and implies, in my opinion, that the Harbinger and now the confirmed Endless or Zalanin are in fact of a precursor origin. So maybe in Halo Infinite's DLC we could see the likes of Abaddon return, and potentially, if the Endless are freed, they could somehow rekindle Abaddon as a precursor AI and we could see Abaddon come to Halo Infinite's campaign DLC, if, and I mean if, the theory is what I do think. The Forerunner domain was essentially destroyed or partially destroyed when the Halo array was fired, and this precursor AI was basically charged with overseeing this arcane knowledge network and was left behind by the precursors after their extinction. So if the Zalanin species are some form of precursor origin, it potentially means they know of Abaddon, and potentially it could help them going forward in gaining more knowledge about the universe and taking over it entirely. So we have a lot of little pathways that are opening up now that Abaddon is in the question, and let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. But this is really, really interesting to theorize about, and I might do a couple of videos going over my theories on how Abaddon could return to Halo Infinite. Now, for me, the final one for this video is really, really cool. I'm going to cap it off here, and I'm going to cover more lore going forward into the week and just going forward in general. There's a lot of lore to cover in this book, so there'll be plenty of videos coming. So make sure you let me know down below in the comments what videos or lore you want me to cover in this book, and I'll see if I can go through it, and I'll see if I can get as much up-to-date information as possible. Now, we get our finals look at Offensive and Mendicant Bias's official Halo Infinite art style, which I think is really, really cool. And this is actually our first look at Offensive Bias in general. And they're very, very different. I mean, the Offensive Bias one is very different to what we expected, and the Mendicant Bias one just looks really cool. It's kind of what we've seen before, but it looks great. Now, on screen right now, you'll see what is believed to be the Halo 3 Guardian. We've seen this potentially teased in Halo Infinite as well as to what we thought was the Halo 3 Guardian. Well, it actually turns out that this is the exact same design as Offensive Bias. This can be seen in Halo Infinite all over the campaign as well, and even some teasers before the game even came out. Anyway, going over the description very quickly of Offensive Bias in the book, and it's a really cool one as well. Following Mendicant Bias's betrayal during the War with the Flood, the Forerunners activated a Metarch level Ancilla called Offensive Bias, charging it with the seemingly impossible task of slowing down Mendicant Bias's hostile advance. Offensive Bias lacked Mendicant's creative range, but was more methodically lethal and precise. In a climactic naval battle, Offensive Bias both outsmarted and defeated the Flood and Mendicant Bias. He did this with tactical brilliance and a cunning rely on the knowledge that the Halo effect would soon eliminate the bulk of Mendicant's Flood-controlled fleet. Following the battle, Offensive Bias broke the defeated Ancilla into its compound mines and secured them for judgment by the Isodidact. Offensive Bias would guard Mendicant's burial site on the Ark in the days to come, but it would not be the last time that he'd be called upon to intercede and stand watch over a grave threat in the galaxy. So, as we said, there we go, the Sand Trap Easter egg on the Ark as well. Potentially that is Mendicant Bias's tomb, and and it's confirmed in the official encyclopedia. So that's a really cool thing they've added in there as well. And it mentions at the very bottom as well that it's not going to be the last time that Offensive Bias is called upon to stand watch over the grave threat of the galaxy, and this is of course referring to the Endless and the form of the legendary ending that we've seen in Halo Infinite. And I seriously think this Offensive Bias will play a huge role in the Halo Infinite campaign DLC that we'll be hopefully getting fairly soon, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. But guys, that's going to do it all for today. I'm going to have so many lore videos coming on the channel around this book, so make sure you guys subscribe to that to keep up to date with everything that's coming. I'm so glad I've got more lore to discuss and to make more videos on, as that's where essentially my priority should be and where I want it to be. So guys, have a great rest of your day. Leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new, and we'll speak to you all soon.